were two attempted terror attacks this morning and overnight in Samaria. In one, 3 terrorist gunmen were shot and killed, and in the other, a gunman escaped the scene after firing at a civilian bus. ILTV's Steve Leibovich reports.
Early this morning outside Nablus in Samaria, IDF soldiers shot and killed 3 terrorist gunmen who opened fire on the troops from their car. The army says that soldiers were on routine patrol in the Shomronim neighborhood when they suddenly came under fire. The soldiers from the 603 battalion responded quickly, pursued the gunmen, and eliminated them. The terrorists were armed with M16 automatic weapons. Last night, an Israeli civilian bus came under a hail of bullets fired in the Palestinian village of Huwara. There were no injuries, but the bus was damaged. At least 6 bullets hit the bus. IDF forces launched a search for the gunmen. In recent months, Huwara has been the scene of terrorist shootings at Israeli drivers passing through the village to reach nearby Jewish communities. Palestinian property in the town has been attacked by Jewish vigilantes. In a separate development, IDF forces conducted a counter-terror operation near Tulkarem in Samaria. The operation included use of heavy engineering equipment used to uncover explosives and other weapons stored underground. Terrorists activated several explosives. No soldiers were injured. The forces also interrogated wanted terrorists and searched for explosive labs.
A night of anti-government protests in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Soon after the contentious reasonableness bill passed its final Knesset reading, protesters blocked major freeways in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem. ILTV's William Sharon has more.
Using mounted police and water cannons, authorities managed to clear the major Tel Aviv thoroughfare after 1 a.m., though thousands continued to demonstrate at nearby Kaplan Street throughout the night. There were a number of incidents of violence allegedly aimed at protesters, including a driver that plowed through a group blocking the road to north of Tel Aviv, injuring 3. The driver was arrested. Some activists in Hebrew language media reports accused the police of using excessive violence and brutal tactics, largely unseen during 29 weeks of large protests against the reform. Activists raged against the government's passage of the first part of its plan to remake the country's judiciary, facing off against police for hours in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. They promised to ratchet up demonstrations and civil disobedience even as the coalition lawmakers celebrated its first judicial reform law and vowed to push ahead with the rest of the program. In Jerusalem, police also used officers on horseback and powerful blasts of skunk water to drive off protesters who rallied first outside the Knesset and Supreme Court and later blocked the Begin Freeway. They also protested outside the Supreme Court, an institution that the government critic says they will be left weakened by the judicial reforms and harm Israeli democracy. According to police, at least 33 people were arrested throughout the day and night in demonstrations in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
The Israel Medical Association has voted to strike for 24 hours in solidarity with the protests. In an effort to prevent the strike, Health Minister Moshe Arbel and Director General of the Health Ministry Moshe Bar Simantov have held an urgent discussion with Deputy Attorney General Avital Sompolinsky and representatives of the State Attorney's Office. During the strike, the healthcare system will operate on a limited Shabbat and holiday schedule. However, emergency rooms in general and psychiatric hospitals will remain operational. Notably, certain medical services such as IVF treatments, urgent care, oncological treatments, and some psychiatric services will not be affected by the strike. But outpatient clinics will be closed and patients with scheduled hospital procedures and surgeries will be considered on a case-by-case basis due to the short notice. Health Minister Arbel has expressed concerns that the strike will unfairly impact thousands of patients and has called for efforts to prevent the strike from proceeding. Meanwhile, the Regional Labor Court in Bat Yam ordered at noon the striking doctors to return to work immediately. And joining us now in studio is ILTV's Steve Leibovich. How are you doing?
Okay.
Highways blocked, rising civil disobedience, doctors striking. Where are we heading?
Well, you asked how am I doing, and I said okay, but actually yesterday was one of the most difficult days of covering the news I can remember in almost 50 years in the business, close to. That's part of it, working for the government, actually. The Rabin assassination, the Oslo agreements, disengagement, those were 3 other times I can remember that had the intensity, the anger, the division that I felt yesterday. I went straight up to the barricades in the Knesset where the last rows of protesters were opposite the horses. These were people at the hour of the vote. I turned and I looked at them in their eyes to see what their mood was. They're determined to remain out there. But I'll also say that they were the most non-violent protesters I've almost ever experienced in all the years I've covered demonstrations. None of these people were going to go over the barriers, at least not there. I understand it was a little bit different later on in Tel Aviv, on the Ayalon, and also on Begin.
Experience the power of truth with ILTV News. If you're looking for quality content and captivating visuals, join our news community and become an integral part of our team as we embark on a mission to unveil the real Israel, dismantling the web of lies and misinformation that surround reporting on Israel. By subscribing to ILTV News, you will not only have access to the latest updates, but you will also amplify our message, creating a ripple effect that carries the truth far and wide. Subscribe today and help reshape the narrative. Available on the web, Android, and Apple.
Hours after the Knesset coalition passed the reasonableness bill into law, Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the nation in a call for calm and unity and a return to the negotiating table for a consensual change to the judiciary. The opposition was unimpressed. The Prime Minister told the nation why it was important that the law be enacted.
היום ביצענו מהלך דמוקרטי מתבקש. המהלך נועד להחזיר מידה של איזון בין הרשויות, מה שהיה פה במשך 50 שנה. העברנו את התיקון לעילת הסבירות כדי שהממשלה הנבחרת תוכל להוביל את המדיניות בהתאם להחלטת רוב אזרחי המדינה.
Netanyahu said that the upcoming Knesset recess can be an opportunity to revisit negotiations on consensual changes to the judiciary.
כבר בימים הקרובים, הקואליציה תפנה לאופוזיציה במטרה לקיים שיח בינינו. אנחנו מוכנים לדון על הכל ומיד, ולעשות את זה בסבב השיחות בפגרה, ולהגיע להסכם כולל על הכל, ואם צריך, אנחנו נוסיף עוד זמן, עד סוף נובמבר.
The Israeli leader assured the public that Israel will remain a strong, vibrant democracy.
כולנו מסכימים שאנחנו, ישראל, חייבת להישאר דמוקרטיה חזקה, שהיא תמשיך לשמור על זכויות הפרט לכולם, שהיא לא תהפוך למדינת הלכה, שבית המשפט ימשיך להיות עצמאי, ושאף צד לא ישתלט עליו. אני מבקש להדגיש את זה שוב. אסור שאף צד ישתלט על בית המשפט. זה פשוט לא יקרה במשמרת שלנו.
Netanyahu insisted that army service for reservists be left out of any political controversy.
כולנו צריכים להסכים על עוד דבר אחד. צה"ל חייב להישאר מחוץ לכל מחלוקת פוליטית. כולנו יודעים שצה"ל נשען על משרתי מילואים מסורים, אוהבי המדינה. הקריאה לסרבנות פוגעת בביטחון של כל אזרחי המדינה. לשום ממשלה אין אפשרות להיכנע לתכתיבי סרבנות, ואנחנו לא ניכנע לתכתיבים כאלה.
Opposition leader Yair Lapid quickly dismissed Netanyahu's overture, calling it an empty show because he had lost control. According to Lapid, Netanyahu is not really Israel's prime minister. He is a prisoner of Justice Minister Yariv Levin and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir.
Steve, we're back to you. What was in Netanyahu's speech to the nation? Maybe let's phrase it better. What was behind the scenes of what he had in his speech, and what was it missing?
Well, it was a great speech on a very, very divisive day. You have, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets. There is nothing he could have possibly said to calm them down. And I'd go further and say there is nothing he could have possibly said that they would believe. Most of the country, or a lot of the country, was watching TV with the drama of President Herzog arriving back from the United States, going straight to the hospital room of Prime Minister Netanyahu to negotiate an agreement. Everyone was telling us for almost 24 hours that the two sides, the opposition, coalition, are close to an agreement. It's just a matter of how many months and so on. And this thing's going to be put on pause again. And we could have all breathed a sigh of relief, you could say, and it would have been Netanyahu's doing. That's not the way he was going. So that was not in his speech. What his speech was, post-victory, the coalition has won a victory here. He explained why they did what they did, why it was important. What he didn't explain to the Israeli people is how is it worth the cost?